Hi all. Today I will discuss about the hot carrier injection theory as a part of my tutorial series on reliability modeling and reliability aware design. Uh, One interesting thing about hot carrier injection is that it's not only one way, like the way we saw in the previous tutorial on PTI, wherein there was one particular way in which the things were happening. For example, the hydrogen bonds were dissociating at the interface between SiO2, and that was causing a drift in the threshold voltage only. In case of hot carrier injection, however, you see a shift in both threshold voltage, that is the threshold voltage increases, and a degradation in the mobility because of the increased Coulombic scattering. Why? Because you suppose you inject something close by, so that charge carrier acts as a Coulomb scatterer to the main inversion layer that is going to flow from source to drain. So yeah, it's interesting. The HCI theory is interesting, and we'll see what different kinds of mechanisms within the same theory exist. Also, in particular, I will discuss the HCI theory in N MOSFETs. So for P MOSFETs, basically the contribution that is due to hole injection occurs for the condition of Vg equal to Vd equal to the VDD of that rated VDD of that device. So the P MOSFET theory is actually only one kind of HCI mechanism, and that's why I'm not undertaking that. However, for N MOSFETs, you have some different scenarios, and according to those different scenarios, you get different kinds of pictures for or physical picture of how the HCI occurs. Okay, so as I explained earlier, HCI in general in both N MOSFETs and P MOSFETs degrades the threshold voltage and the mobility, and the physics is there. I mean, the basically the degradation is coming because of the physics of the degradation of MOS capacitance due to the trapped charges inside the oxide. And furthermore, now I will discuss the theory and modeling next in the next few slides. In this slide, we will talk about basically two different kinds of mechanisms for HCI degradation for NMOS devices. Uh, to the left is the drain avalanche hot carrier injection, for which the bias condition is Vd greater than Vg, whereas to the right is the channel hot carrier injection, for which the bias condition is Vd equals Vg. Note that in both the cases, the source and the bulk are supposed to be grounded. All right. And shown in the figure are also the gate polysilicon, the SiO2, the channel, which is pinched off here because of the inversion region, and whatever is not inversion region is basically depletion region. So you can see the source depletion region, because Vs is equal to 0 and Vb equal to 0, you have a lesser extension of the source depletion region, whereas the drain depletion region, because the Vd is there some value, let's say 5 volt device, it is let's say 4 volt or 5 volt, then you have that. Because of that, the drain to bulk depletion region is higher than the source to bulk depletion region. And for this bias condition, wherein Vd is equal to Vg, obviously the Vd the approximately the source and the drain depletion regions will be approximately equal. However, the drain side will be slightly higher, which is not shown in the figure. All right. So let's take a look at, let's not get into the nitty gritties of the depletion region extension. Let's see how, let's say, an electron that has been recently been emitted by the source to bulk diode. Because why? Because the source to bulk barrier is basically the barrier, it's also the barrier of the source to bulk diode, and the electron is basically then going to be emitted across that potential barrier by the process of diffusion, right? And that is the reason why the subthreshold current is primarily this diffusion current, which is being emitted by the source to bulk diode. Whereas in right now we are not in the subthreshold region, we are in the proper inversion and basically the saturation region. And for that, once this thing is emitted by this diode, this electron is basically going to undergo a drift current. So this current that flowed right now, the electron that I flowed, the electron that went through the channel is right now the drift under the drift field, right, or the drift current. It's a part of the drift current, not the diffusion current, right? And this same electron which reaches the drain can cause the whole electron pair to get generated towards the drain end. And the electron, because now it is hot, can get captured by the SiO2 layer, thus increasing the total trapped charge N total in the SiO2 layer, which in turn increases the QOX and NIT, and due to which, so combined factor is basically combined result is that the threshold voltage or magnitude of threshold voltage increases. The same logic is also valid for the PMOS devices, basically that the magnitude of VT will increase because of the capture of holes in the SiO2 layer. All right. So, so I have also explained the PMOS device HCI degradation. Also, this hole, generated hole, will be naturally be captured by the bulk, which basically causes the substrate current I sub to flow in this device. So you can say that the substrate current is basically a prime indicator of the HCI, and that is the reason for NMOS devices you plot the substrate current as a function of Vg for a given Vd, and then if you see a huge amount of substrate current, you conclude that okay, there is definitely HCI that is going to happen. Also, typically you will see if you plot I sub versus Vg, you will get a bell-shaped curve. That is, at a particular Vg you will get a peak, and this is unlike PMOS devices wherein you almost get a very less substrate current. And so substrate current for PMOS devices is not an indicator of HCI, whereas definitely it is an indicator of HCI for NMOS devices. All right. So this is basically, in short, drain avalanche hot carrier injection. What about channel hot carrier injection, which is for which PD equals Vg? This is the bias condition indicated for channel hot carrier injection. Now what happens that the same electron reaches the drain, and instead that itself is so hot that it immediately gets captured by the SiO2 layer close to the drain, and that is the cause for the increase in the threshold voltage due to channel hot carrier injection. Now both of these mechanisms have been taken from reference 1, which is basically Hitachi's handbook for hot carrier injection, and that is an excellent material, in fact, to look into the theory of HCI. Now this is an interesting theory, and this is something that I have also seen in the reliability measurements that I did on certain N MOSFETs. And what I actually observed then was that, and this is coming from my experience, that what I observed for some kinds of N MOSFETs was that, especially which had halo implants, and halo implants means that you will have a threshold voltage adjustment implant for N MOSFET, wherein you will introduce a halo implant here, a P plus implant. So this is N plus for a N MOSFET. You will introduce halo implant here, P plus here, P plus here. So especially for those kind of MOSFETs, I observed that if I, let's say, measure the stress data for, let's say, 10,000 seconds, then for initial 2,000 to 3,000 seconds, I was observing, in fact, a decrease in the threshold voltage. And then that led me to investigate this phenomenon, and this is the following is a description coming from the references 5 and 6, which have been given at the end of this presentation. So what the kind of phenomena that now I'm talking about is this, is the hole injection into the SiO2 layer. And so instead of basically electron getting injected due to the impact ionization, it is the hole. Now, what is the cause for this is that because of the aggressive scaling in MOSFETs, what you have is in turn increase in the channel and oxide electric fields. And that increase in the field also increases the efficiency of the hot hole generation. So remember in the last slide I showed that the hole that was generated was captured by the bulk, thus causing the substrate current. So in certain devices, when you don't see that much substrate current coming, probably in and mostly in N MOSFETs, because of the halo implants, because of the excess holes which is being given by the halo implant, and also because of the general hot holes being generated because of the impact ionization, you get so one thing is abundance of holes, and second thing, hot holes created in the depletion electric field. These two reasons, the holes get injected into SiO2. Also because holes have, and that also happens during the initial stress time, is because holes have larger capture rates than electrons in oxides. Again, this is coming from reference 5 and 6. And that's why VTH, and if you have a positively charged, if you have a capture of positively charged holes in the SiO2, obviously your threshold voltage will decrease, which means threshold voltage will improve during the initial 2 to 3,000 seconds. And so during the initial stress, I was observing in those kind of devices, a decrease in the threshold voltage. Now, why, halo kind, basically for halo type devices, because simply because you have the abundance of holes. And this is a very interesting phenomenon that is, important for analog devices. Why? Because this whole implant, the halo implant, is basically done for typically, analog types of devices, not for digital ones. And that's why this decrease of VTH initially and improvement in the threshold voltage is a very interesting phenomena in the HCI theory. Another interesting theory I have come across for the hot carrier injection degradation is due to the substrate bias VB-STR. So if you, let's say, stress, so till now whatever the mechanisms I showed was saying that VBS was equal to 0. So VS was 0, VB was itself 0. Now suppose you have some value of VBS, okay, on top of everything. Let's say even the device is in inversion, the drain electric field is there, gate electric field is there. So the depletion electric field is like the way it is shown here. And I'm not showing right now here for brevity, I'm not showing the inversion layer for this case. And so you have, let's say, VB, magnitude VB is very, very greater than 0 for NMOS, and there is also an existence of secondary generated hot carrier, which is basically, we'll see what this is in the animation. So let's say you have an abundance of electrons coming from the external connection, external source, because the holes are getting recombined here, so that are attracting the electrons. That thing is attracting electrons from the supply, right? And these electrons, because the VBS is very, very high, okay, because the VBS is very, very high, and the direction of the electric field is positive here, negative here. It's the other way around, the negative, it's basically negative VB, right? So negative here and positive here. So the electrons have the electric field, are facing the electric field in such a direction that they can get attracted towards the source or towards oxide or towards the drain, okay? So that is the direction of the electric field. So what can happen is that they can get injected into SiO2, okay? So this is basically the hot carrier degradation due to the injection of injection from the substrate. Okay. Another sub mechanism, which is also called as secondary generated hot carrier, is because this hole that was getting generated due to the impact ionization towards the drain, and which basically causes the substrate current, right? That can itself generate electron hole pair in this depletion region, and then that secondary generated electron can again get injected into the SiO2. So this is also called as the secondary generated hot carrier, for which the bias condition is again shown here. VD should be, in addition to VB being extremely negative, you should also have VD greater than VG for this thing to happen. All right. So this is yet another mechanism which is interesting actually for the case where VBS is highly negative in MOSFETs. Now I'm going to talk about how, let's say this HCI gets modeled in cadence environment, particularly in the RelExpert. The basic equation that is used is for something called as age. All right, age a as a function of time is basically given by square root of nth root of 1 by fc times delta p by p, where p could be the parameter which we are saying is getting degraded. For example, VTH0 or mu 0 or u0 for in BSIM for mobility. So let's say, so for example, so in that case there will be delta VTH by VTH and delta u0 by u0. For example, if we choose to model in BSIM, let's say, then there will be two P's basically, VTH0 and u0, right? So in RelExpert, what you can do is that you can write your own equation for age as a function of time, A as a function of time, and you can calculate the instantaneous age rate, which is A as a function of time. All right, which is internally the function that is used to calculate that inside the C code is the calc A function, calc A. Then output of calc A, which is A as a function of time, goes to what is called as calc delta age. What it calculates is the delta age, the increment in the delta age from in T start to T stop, from the T start to T stop. So T start is generally 0 and T stop is generally the final time, the final time till which your transient simulation is getting simulated. So what delta age is the incremental accumulation of the age. So delta H is basically an incremental accumulation in the age. Note that this T stop is not equal to T stress, okay, which is coming here. This is just during one simulation step, okay. So for example, during the initial transient step, it will be from 0 to the first T step. Then from that T step to next T step. And reason why I'm saying the next T step is because in spectral simulation, you don't have equal length of the T steps. You have unequal length of T steps. And that's why for each T step, you will have T start and T stop. So delta H is going to be something that is incremental. All right. And after you calculate the delta age, the output of that goes to calc age. And what calc age does is it calculates the final degradation from the extrapolated age till the given T stress. So what it will do is it will calculate the final age by this formula. All right. So by the way, this formula is assuming what? The T stop and T start are so what are the T stop minus T start, which is the T step, is equal in the simulation. However, if it is unequal, then there has to be some intermediate function which is there, which I have not mentioned, which will basically somehow do an integration for this and not just use this kind of formula and calculate the final age. And then the delta p by p again will be given by the age raised to power n. So this is something that is reported in the .bo0 or .ba0 file in the RelExpert simulation. So delta P by P in case of HCI will be delta VTH by VTH. That will have some age, and then delta U0 by U0 that will have another age. So ultimately you will get delta VTH and delta U0, right? So this is how, in short, age is calculated in RelExpert, and according to this particular flow. Also remember that whatever the physics that I was talking about, let's say for BTI or for HCI, whatever the physics I have showed you, that you can create your own model. In fact, you need not use the typical model that is based on substrate current or something. If you believe that it is the energy that is causing it, then there is a model from Stuart Roche from IBM, which is called as energy driven model for HCI. So you can just implement those equations for A of t, and the RelExpert can take care of everything else according to the parameters of that A of t extracted from the stress data. And then you can the RelExpert takes care of everything else, and then you just take the delta P by P from the .bo0 file and then create your end of life netlist, as I explained in the previous tutorial. What is the beginning of life and end of life model? So because basically you can put delta VTH by delta VTH and delta mobility for into the end of life netlist. And in order to understand what it is, you have to see my previous tutorial. So this is how you can yourself generate your own model, in fact, reliability model, and put it into RelExpert, and then test your, let's say, circuits, design circuits using RelExpert simulation. Now, this is a very interesting problem that I encountered while coding the RelExpert models, and it is, I think, worth taking a look at. So this is especially important for those, let's say, BSIM models or any other compact model in which you have a thermal network implemented, which is basically a power source of I times V, which is driving thermal resistance RTH and a thermal capacitance CTH in parallel, wherein the one node temperature is T device, right, and the other temperature node is the T ambient. Okay, so this is the thermal self-heating modeling model, which is common to both BSIM and ASM compact model. All right. So suppose you want to implement a reliability model for your BSIM model, which has self-heating inside it, then following is a problem that you need to definitely take care of. So before that, I must mention that the time constant of the self-heating is then RTH times CTH. So what this time constant tau means, that if you are simulating for a time scale much greater than this time constant, then this thermal network is going to give you a rise in temperature, internal rise in temperature, that is a steady state rise in temperature. Okay, a proper steady state. For example, a temperature rise of from 55 degrees centigrade to 70 degrees centigrade, let's say. So then the delta T is 15 degrees centigrade. So that complete 15 degrees centigrade you will get for a time scale much greater than tau, right? But however, if the time scale in the transient, if the applied frequency, for example, if the applied frequency is such that the 1 by f is, let's say, 1 by f is, let's say, very, very less than this tau, all right? 1 by f is very, very less than tau. Then the same delta T at each, the rise in temperature at each T step would not be a steady state value. You might ask, okay, what if that is that? How is that important to my reliability simulation? For reliability simulation, and if you have self-heating model, your uh, and provided you want your self-hitting model to get evaluated in the reliability simulation, uh, we will have to basically simulate for a time scale for at least 3 to 4 times of this tau. And for the time scale which is less than that, basically, even if you turn off your self-hitting model, it will be off. I mean, if you plot the results of reliability simulation for self-hitting model turned off or turned on, you will basically have the same result. And why I'm saying this is that this is important for power amplifier simulation. Because why? Because in power amplifier you get voltage swings. You can get voltage swings 2 times VDD across the device. And in such a case, let's say your frequency is high also compared to the time constant of the thermal network, which is being modeled inside the model, the total model of the device. In that case, essentially, you believe that okay, your self-hitting model is going to predict some shift in the reliability. However, it will not, because inside the simulation, let's say your tau is such. That's why, because the reason for this is that basically people don't extract the generally for self-hitting, people don't extract CTH separately. They just extract RTH, and the CTH is generally kept at the same default value. So that is not good. If you really want a reliability model for especially RF circuit like a power amplifier, you definitely should model the CTH also correctly. That is, the time constant tau should also be modeled correctly, and in relation to that only the simulation, the reliability simulation will be correct. So for example, this time constant tau is correct, and even and let's say your 1/f is very, very less than tau, then obviously the self-hitting will not affect the power amplifier reliability, right? Which is expected, which is logical. But if your tau is such that 1/f is approximately 3 to 4 times of tau, then definitely this scenario will definitely affect your power amplifier simulation in terms of the reliability prediction. So here is the example, what I am plotting here is the rise in, or not rise, the temperature on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. So let's say you have a time constant tau of 0.1 microsecond, which you can see for, let's say, a 1 volt N MOSFET device. And what I'm doing is that for that, for frequency of 1 gigahertz, okay, I have, so which means the time period is 1 nanosecond, right? The time period of the input waveform across the power amplifier, which is a common source power amplifier, is 1 gigahertz, and the VDD obviously is 1 volt. So it's not even the stress condition. It's because it's a 1 volt N MOSFET device I'm talking about, and the VDD amplitude is 0.8 volt, let's say, which is close to a power amplifier kind of waveform. So what is now happening? Let's say for the time period of 1 nanosecond, if I, let's say, simulate, then I'm getting 52.5 to 52.6. So it is very it's not a, because this is a transient rise and fall in the temperature, right? Because the thermal network is basically now unable to follow the change in the input, and that's why you are getting something like this. However, this waveform is actually, when I let's say simulate till 1 microsecond, it is a very small portion here. So it's not this is a transient waveform. It's not a steady state waveform. So steady state is this. So steady state is, let's say, the temperature reaches a value of 59 degree from 52 degree. So this is the point we want to capture for a power amplifier, and not these points, right? So a very important conclusion from above curve is that for PA kind of voltage swings and frequencies, the self-hitting thermal model of BSIM or ASM will not be able to settle down to steady state values. If for the time scale which is very, very less than the time constant of the thermal network. Although there will definitely be some average rise in device temperature delta T if 1/f is very, very less than tau. However, here is where you need to decide, here is where you need to decide uh, whether the source of this is the source of the time constant tau. Is it coming from the because the CTH was not extracted correctly, or whether it is the correct way, or the other scenario is that okay, CTH has been correctly extracted. Then in that case, obviously, self-fitting model is not going to impact, or self-fitting is not going to definitely impact the power amplifier kind of simulation, waveform simulation. However, one of the ways to actually again even correct for that kind of step variation that I explained earlier is basically let's the explanation for that is following. Let's say you have any V node which is contributing to the self-heating varying like this, let's say, for a power amplifier kind of simulation. This is a T start, this is a T stop, and this is taking into account a variable T step of the of this T start to T stop. This is the so this T start this T stop is different than the T start T stop I explained in the age rate calculation. This is just a one time period of a bound for the one time period of the waveform. All right, and inside that I am showing the variable T steps now. Okay. Now then let's assume that the age rate calculated from above stress waveform appearing on an arbitrary device instance is proportional to, let's say, the T device and V node. Then we can say that age as a function of time, let's say basically HCI age rate in this case is a function of T device and the V node, right? Then the total age calculated will also be some function of T device and V node. And hence the degradation is basically this age raised to power n, and hence degradation is also a function of T device and V node. So, and as seen from the above figure, as V node is changing in the transient simulation, the temperature at each T step also changes as per the local overall stress, which is given by the integral of A of t dt and is given by the self-heating model also. So if we accommodate the delta T calculated by the self-heating model at each T step, then only we'll be capturing the local rise in device temperature in equation 1. So what I'm trying to say in short is that either you model the CTH correctly, so that then then the value of tau is, let's say, then comes correctly, then so that the tau is much less than each T step that each variable T step that is being shown here, then and only then your REL expert simulation will be correct. And obviously the other case is that really that the tau is much greater than the minimum T step as mentioned here. Then in that case obviously the self-heating is not going to matter in the reliability simulation. So here are the references from 1 to 5. Very interesting. This Hitachi Semiconductor Device Reliability Handbook is a very interesting and very extensive compilation of various HCI mechanisms. Definitely you should take a look at it if you are interested. And these are the other papers that I refer to for this tutorial. I'll be happy to answer your questions and on whatever I've explained. I know last couple of slides were very extensive and very probably they were very intense, and you might want to go through them again maybe to understand what I was trying to say. Anyways, and any questions from your side will be appreciated, and in the next tutorial in in this reliability, I would basically cover the yield, the impact of reliability on yield, and 3 sigma the total 6 sigma distribution in the corners. All right, take care. Bye.